Good morning to you. Good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning to you. You. Good morning, good morning to you, and many more. Good morning, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host today, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you for your time and your attention, and to those who will come and watch the replay. Let's get started. Today, I have a brief devotional and a brief reading today. We are going to end a little early because I do have another appointment I have to get to. But I want to start with Dennis Kimbrough's devotional, Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice, Daily Motivations for African American Success. So let's get into it. Today is May 8th, and it is season 15, episode 37. The title of today's devotional is Busybodies. I think this is a very interesting quote by Desmond Tutu. And the quote is, "When your dreams turn to dust, vacuum." We've all heard the saying, use it or lose it. The familiar proverb embodies one of the most important principles of human nature. To become proficient in any field, you must practice. However, we tend to think of this maxim in terms of our bodies. For example, if I place your right arm in a cast for 3 months, it will atrophy to almost nothing by the time the cast is removed. Only months of regular exercise will restore it to normalcy. As we grow older and our lives become more sedentary, we cease to put regular strain on our muscles. As a result, our bodies become soft and fragile. We lose our physical conditioning through failure to use our muscles. And as a consequence, we are easy prey for sickness or disease. Regular and systematic use of our bodies prevents such deterioration. If some people didn't lift their eyebrows, jokes Lee Haney, Mr. Olympia, they would never get any exercise. Becoming busy with your body has its advantages. So too with the more intangible parts of our natures. We must use our courage or it deserts us. We must use our determination or it leaves us. We must exercise our power of decision or we soon find that we have none. To achieve a standard of excellence, to accomplish anything extraordinary, we must be disciplined and willing to devote hours to the task at hand. It means using our physical and our mental muscles in order to reach our objective. Each of us best fulfills our destiny when we operate on full capacity and when we are fully extended. So, the affirmation for today is I will exercise both my physical and mental muscles. And yeah. All right. So as we go ahead and get into our topic, forgiveness, as usual, because the internet is wide and broad and broad and wide, we are going to limit our conversation to subscribers only. So if you have not taken time to subscribe to the page, go ahead and do that now. Because usually those who are subscribed to the page have a little bit more sense. All right. So let's get into our reading. As I said, we aren't going to read very long today. I do want to make sure we have some time for discussion because I am ending a little bit early today. But we are starting chapter 9, and believe it or not, we've been reading this book all season, and we are just about to the end of this book. So if you've been listening in with us and listening as I have been your live human audio, you can say, I finished this book. The book is Failures of Forgiveness, What We Get Wrong and How to Do Better by Dr. Maisha Cherry. We are on chapter 9, which I think is a super important chapter entitled Forgiving Yourself. What I'm coming to find out, and I am not quite 50 yet, I got a couple more years before I hit 50, but what I'm coming to find out is a lot of people have not forgiven themselves. A lot of people are living their life through the lens of unforgiveness of themselves, living their life through the lens of regret, living their life through the lens of if only and what if I had. Um, and I think that contributes to some of the unhappiness that we see. I definitely think that contributes to some of the, um, I wouldn't say clinical depression, but definitely some of the depression that we see in the people that are around us. One thing that I have tried to do is I've tried to live my life in a way where I don't have regrets about anything, whether it be my friendships, my relationships, my professional life, my spiritual life. Um, as part of my personal inner work, that's one thing that I've been working on is making sure that I don't have regrets about the choices that I'm making or the decisions that I'm making in life. That I can lay my head on the pillow at night, close my eyes, and say, I did the best today with what I had. I did the best today with what I knew. I did the best today and I gave forth the best effort according to my personal physical health and strength and not have any regrets about that day. And because I've been working on that for some years now, I feel like I've gotten to a place where I'm living a pretty regret free life. I wouldn't say everything is clear, but definitely better than I was a decade ago. Um, and so, as we look at this topic of forgiving yourself, I do want people to think about whether or not they're holding on to anything in their life that is stopping them from living fully. Is there anything in your past? Is there anything even in your present that you're looking at and you still have regrets over it? You still have um, the pain of the heartbreak over it in real time. I want you to think about, are you allowing yourself to release the past? Are you allowing yourself to release the pain? Or are you holding on to it? Is part of your holding on, does it have to do with this idea of not forgiving yourself, wishing things could have been different, even though you can't change them and make them any more different than they are? All right. So let's take a look. We're again just going to start this chapter and we'll probably stop about 11, 11:15, 11, somewhere in there. And I will bring on Pastor Ben if you're here this morning to chop it up with us about this excerpt today. Forgiving yourself. Not a day goes by that I do not think of my deceased mother, the writer says. My thoughts in part are owing to grief. I miss our conversations, her hugs, and her unconditional love. I would do anything to bring her back. The other thoughts I have are rooted in regret. I wish I had been a better daughter. I wish I had been more attentive to her needs. I wish I had visited her more often. I wish. It has been much easier to forgive my stepfather than it has been to forgive myself. It makes sense conceptually for us to forgive or withhold forgiveness from selfish and inconsiderate wrongdoers. But things get more complicated when that wrongdoer is yourself. What gives us the right to forgive ourselves? The purpose of presenting the broad view of forgiveness is not just to expand what we take forgiveness to be, it's also to broaden the scope of who has the right or standing to forgive. On the narrow view, only victims can forgive wrongdoers. But on the broader conception, this right extends to wrongdoers forgiving themselves. Self forgiveness is possible. This doesn't mean, however, that it's without difficulties or dangers, but it is possible. Getting beyond the fantasy. Forgiving others and forgiving yourself involve similar practices and aims. There are subtle differences, though. Some of the differences can be explained by the fact that the target of forgiveness is oneself. Forgiving yourself can involve, among other practices, relinquishing shame, which is huge for a lot of people, overcoming negative self evaluations or how you see yourself, or refraining from self harm or self sabotage. We forgive ourselves so that we might achieve several self directed reparative aims. We can forgive in order to get release from the offense, get release from our self hatred, or to reconcile ourselves to ourselves so that we can go on living. These self directed aims might even be required in order to repair our relationship with the victim, for it may be hard to reconcile a friendship when we have refused to forgive ourselves. In order for repair to be achieved among friends, it must also occur within the offending friend. Myriad things can be the objects of forgiveness. You can forgive yourself for having performed bad deeds and having had cruel thoughts. You could forgive yourself for harboring hatred and contempt and for what you could have done but neglected to do. Whether we have the standing to forgive ourselves is another question. If we don't have this right, then self forgiveness is just a fantasy. If we do, then it is not only possible, but requires that we perform it with much care. In the philosophical novel, The Brothers Karamazov directly tackles the issue of who has the right to forgive. As we will see, is helpful for answering our self forgiveness question. The topic of forgiveness occurs in the novel during a conversation about the problem of evil. Ivan, in talking with his monk brother, Alyosha, cites the suffering of children as a counterexample to the idea that there is harmony in the universe. He denies that parents, in responding to their children's suffering, can forgive the perpetrators. But the sufferings of her tortured child, she, the mother, has no right to forgive. She dare not forgive the torturer, even if the child were to forgive him. This standing question also extends to God. When discussing the suffering of a child torn to pieces by a hound at a master's command, Ivan asks, what right does God have to forgive such a monster when it wasn't God who was torn to pieces? For Ivan, because the mother and God did not suffer what the child suffered, they have no right to forgive the offender for the child's suffering. We can see how this might also apply to self forgiveness. Who are we to forgive ourselves for the sufferings we've inflicted on others? We ourselves did not suffer, so it appears, based on Ivan's logic, that we have no right to forgive. The philosopher Gordon Marino agrees. In describing self forgiveness as a fantasy, Marino recognizes that changing yourself and recognizing wrongdoing is one thing, forgiving yourself is another. He urges us to preserve the distinction between. There is no consensus on this issue among philosophers of forgiveness. For some thinkers, only victims can forgive. Because the wrongdoers are not the victims, they have no right. Only victims can forgive offenders for the suffering they've endured at the offender's hands. Thus, self forgiveness is impossible at best and inappropriate at worst, they say. These thinkers don't believe that your boss can forgive your coworker for bullying you, or that a daughter can forgive her stepfather for cheating on her mother. Forgiveness belongs only to the victim. Ignoring this risks appropriating and even silencing the victim's voice. Third party efforts involve, at best, a dangerous paternalism. At worst, they are morally and logically incoherent. On the other hand, there are philosophers who believe that self forgiveness is possible and thus appropriate under certain conditions. I am a part of this latter camp. To make sense of the possibility of self forgiveness, it helps to begin by laying out the harms that self forgiveness responds to. This will help determine if it is a paradox or if it is a possibility. Self forgiveness responds to the harms done to others and the harms done to ourselves. Self forgiveness seems more coherent when it comes to self harm because, in this case, the forgiver is also the victim. If, as Ivan and some philosophers claim, only victims can forgive, then self forgiveness is possible. It's possible as a response to self harm, the harm we do to ourselves. There are many ways we can harm ourselves. We can engage in self degradation, including behavioral practices such as letting ourselves become addicted, where we demean or damage our capacities to think or to be. We can also sacrifice our own hopes and plans through irrational or short term decision making. When we begin to forgive ourselves for these harms, we are responding as an agent to our own victimhood. In response, our self infliction of harm, we can say, I forgive myself. Understanding self forgiveness gets trickier, though, when it comes to harming others. There's a variety of ways in which we can hurt other people. I needn't provide a list for you here. A stroll through social media or cable news channels reveals the various sufferings that human beings enact on each other every single day. Whether it's neglect or verbal abuse, disrespect, violence, or injustice, we have all harmed others at some point in our lives. Is it possible to forgive ourselves for it? Thinkers like Marina don't think so, but this position has more to do with how we conceive of the harm than it does with forgiveness itself. Those who think that only victims can forgive have what psychologist Sharon Lamb refers to as a hyper individualized notion of personal harm. They believe that the only people who can be harmed by an offense are the victims who suffer as a direct result of the offense. These victims are direct or primary victims. Often, however, there are multiple kinds of victims of wrongdoing, people who experience harm as a result. The mother in Ivan's story did not suffer in the way that her child did, but she did suffer the loss of a child. That is a harm that is hers alone. It's for this reason that Ivan also says, let her forgive him for herself, if she will. Let her forgive the torturer for the immeasurable suffering of her mother's heart. The murder of a child does not only affect the child. The murder has multiple victims, his mother being one of them. Therefore, it's possible for the mother to forgive the murderer. She is forgiving him not for the same reasons for which her son would have, but her forgiveness is possible. This distinction helps make self forgiveness more coherent. If there are multiple victims of personal harm, it's also possible that the wrongdoer might be one of the victims. This rings true if you agree with the ethical viewpoints of people like James Baldwin and Martin Luther King Jr. Baldwin thought that hatred is always self hatred, and that whoever debases other people is in fact debasing themselves. King believed that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny, that whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. If by hurting others we also hurt ourselves, as Baldwin and King communicated so eloquently, then it makes sense that a person could forgive themselves for inflicting such harm. A daughter could forgive herself for depriving her own self of precious time she could have spent with her mother. A misogynist could forgive himself for allowing his sense of inferiority and his need to control to destroy his valuable relationships. Note, as Ivan makes clear in his analysis of the mother and child, that we forgive ourselves for the torture of our own hearts. Only the victim has the right to forgive for their own suffering. Forgiving on their behalf and forgiving oneself for what you did to them are distinct. This leads us to another reason self-forgiveness is possible. The philosopher Alice McLachlan argues that third parties can forgive based on their relationship of care and solidarity with the victim. This relationship is based on being committed to the victim's interests. Examples of third parties who stand in this relationship and therefore would have the right to forgive are family and friends. According to this view, a mother can forgive her child's murderer. She can forgive the wrongdoer not only for the loss of the child, but also for violating the interests of her son, interests to which the mother was committed. A daughter can forgive her stepfather for violating her mother's interests, to which the daughter was also committed. In this way, the daughter and grieving parent can forgive because they have taken the harm personally. They are forgiving the wrongdoer of the harm inflicted on someone they love. The harm affects them intimately. Um, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. We'll come back to this on next week. But she brings out two things that immediately brought up two cases. One about the parent forgiving the person who unalived their child. I know right now in the news we have a case that just came up out of Ohio where the father um, is definitely not in forgiveness mode. He is possibly, I think his attorney is going to go for a case of insanity because he was so distraught at seeing video footage of his son being unalived, um, and it not coinciding with the officer's testimony about why his son was unalived, that he later went out that day after seeing the footage and unalived a officer that was not connected to his son's unaliving. Um, and so there's that incident that's in the news right now. And then as she talked about this third party forgiving, I immediately thought about the controversy that came up when Botham Shamjeen was unalived by a police officer. And at the trial of that police officer, his brother came up to the police officer and was hugging the police officer and offering forgiveness to her. And that infuriated people, to say the least, um, because people were saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this right now? This is essentially could possibly affect her sentencing, which we know now that it did. Um, so those are two cases that just immediately come to my mind when I think about this idea of who can forgive and under what conditions can the forgiveness happen. I'm going to open it up for conversation. And so, Pastor Ben, I'm going to send you. To chop it up. If you are a subscriber, you should be able to comment below. Tell me, what do you think about this topic? Do you think that we can, in fact, forgive ourselves? Or do you think that only people who are considered true victims can forgive? I think I fall under the category of the second category, that there are conditions in which we can forgive ourselves. I think that's where I am settling with my thoughts on it. But yes, if you're following me, if you've been following longer than 10 minutes under subscribing, you should be able to share your thoughts. What are your thoughts on this topic? Is there a need for us to be able to forgive ourselves? Do you feel like we can fully move on having not forgiven ourselves? Um, I can definitely say from what I see around me and the conversations I've had with people that a lot of people are having a hard time moving on in their life because they have not forgiven themselves. So I tend to go by that. And it could be because as she said, there are some people who don't believe in self-forgiveness at all. They believe that forgiveness only belongs to the victim. And if you are the offending party, you're sort of stuck with whatever went on or whatever went down or your part in it. And so there is no release. But I think that's a harmful way to live out your life. And because I see it, and because I see some people have not literally have not moved on, they're still living. Okay, it's bringing back to the broadcast. Let me try again. They're still it's passing them by. um, but they haven't moved on. They haven't moved on from the incident. They haven't moved on from what happened to them or the other person that they might have caused the harm to. They're still holding what they did. And because they're holding what they did, it's like again, they're alive, but it's like they're in a holding pattern. That's the word I'm looking for. They're in a holding pattern in their life. So yeah, I believe in self-forgiveness. And like she said, under certain conditions. All right, Pastor, we're going to bring you in. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I do not see you quite yet. Good morning. I don't see you and I don't hear you yet. Okay, I see you. Good morning. I can see you and hear you. All right, good morning. Mhm. 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 Uh-oh. I think your connection is I can't. It's going now I can. It was going in and out.
Wants to stick a microphone in the survivor's face
Mhm.
and ask them will they forgive them.
Mhm.
But when the victim is white, you don't see that.
At all.
Perfect example. Perfect example. This case with Carmelo Anthony, who defended himself against people that he told them he would defend himself against. You didn't see him stick a microphone in his dad's face or anything, asking will he forgive them. You
I
didn't.
haven't seen it not one time.
It didn't happen.
There's not been
But
any call for the father to forgive immediately at all.
here's the thing: the father should be trying to forgive himself for the way that he raised those bullies. Straight up,
Mm.
it's their actions that caused one of his sons to lose his life. See, and that's media is not going to do come at it with the truth like that. They want to spin it and make the bully the victim.
Mhm.
Had he not bullied that young man, he would be alive.
Mhm.
That was the problem. But see, and
You're breaking up again. Hopefully he'll be able to come back. We can't see you.
Bullying seems to be the thing. Bullying seems to be the thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
helps protect America.
Well,
He pulls out of that. America is a sitting duck.
yeah, yeah. What do you think about the concept of self-forgiveness only belonging to the victim versus self-forgiveness can be, um like she said, it can sometimes be used as a third party, meaning it was not necessarily done to me directly, but if it's done to someone that's close to me, or if it's done to someone that I'm advocating for, I can extend a measure of forgiveness. What do you think about that? Hello? Okay, you're back. I was saying, what do you think about the idea of self forgiveness being able to be given by a third party? So, like it, for example, like she gave the example of, maybe it wasn't done to me, but it was done to my family member or a close friend. Do you think that person could offer forgiveness on behalf of whatever the situation is?
They can't offer forgiveness on behalf of everybody else. They can only offer forgiveness on behalf of themselves.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
Now, if the person is unalived, still, I can only give forgiveness for me, from me, for me, concerning the situation, not for that
Hmm.
person.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, when people step in and they want to give a broad forgiveness for everybody in the family, I'm not with that. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, that's why,
I don't
that's the
agree with
part
that at all.
that's the part I was like, I don't know if somebody can forgive on my behalf, especially if I didn't give them the permission to do that. I don't know if they could.
Right,
And especially if they're trying to forgive somebody for something that was done to me that I haven't forgiven them for. I don't need you to speak on my behalf about any of the stuff that was done to me. Um, my husband doesn't even do that. My husband knows there are certain things that have gone down that, listen, I'm still processing. I haven't gotten to the point of forgiveness yet. I'm still processing what actually happened.
right,
So it would be kind of
right.
premature to try to offer up forgiveness, to say, "Oh yeah, my wife and I forgive you." Excuse me. You might forgive them. I'm still
Yeah,
processing what happened.
yeah, yeah. I forgive you, but Tay Tay, you got to deal with her on that.
Yeah. Final thoughts. Final thoughts. And I thought about the father from Ohio. I'm not sure if you've seen that. Um, whose son was unalived by an officer, and he saw the tape of the unaliving, and then he went out and ran over another officer, and they brought him in. His attorney, I think, is going for a plea of insanity, but
Yeah.
already you can tell by how he was brought into the courtroom and handled. Already, we already know every officer on that force has the look of "we will never forgive you" in their face.
Okay, so why would you expect for somebody to forgive you for unaliving their child
Right.
illegally,
Yeah.
unprovoked? So see,
Yeah.
and that's what I hate about this system. There's a double standard system. See, they can take our lives, lie about it. They try to cover it up. Then the truth comes out. This man flipped because he actually saw the tape.
Hmm.
He saw the truth. He saw what actually happened. Now you got now think about what this man is feeling. Okay, my son is gone. A police officer took his life. Now I'm seeing that they lied about it.
Hmm.
See, now think about all the people that this happened to before his child. See,
Hmm.
all this I can guarantee you because it would be going on in mine. All this stuff was going on in his head, and he snapped. To me, that's insanity. Temporary to me, that's temporary insanity. He took as much as he could take. When he saw that video, he flipped. He snapped.
And
And he
people are
said,
all
listen, I'm a unalive.
and people are um already saying that there's a possibility that they may begin restricting people being able to see that kind of footage because of this reaction. They might begin to take some legal steps in terms of releasing footage. I'm like, y'all do realize that y'all should have been taking that kind of action to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I have been saying this ever since. Like, I have not seen the George Floyd video because I don't know what that would do to my psyche to see that. There's certain footage I'm not going to look at. I will read the report on it,
Mm-hmm.
but I said America has a macabre obsession with replaying Black death publicly on video over and over and over again. To me,
Yeah.
that is no different than the public lynchings where thousands of people would go out to watch a Black person be lynched publicly. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I'm like, this has been a problem. This whole video showing the videos of our deaths, replaying them over and over and over and over again. And here's the reality: you can't tell me these kinds of shootings are not happening to other demographics, but they are only playing ours over and over again publicly. And that is an entire problem. Because what you're doing is you are putting it in the psyche of the national mind that it is okay for our deaths
Mm-hmm.
to be publicized. You're desensitizing people to our unaliving. You're not
Mm-hmm.
desensitizing people to the Spanish community or to the Asian community being unalived or to the Irish community being unalived or to the Jewish community being unalived. You're desensitizing them to our deaths.
Listen, case in point. Case in point. When this guy went through, I think it was Georgia, went through these massage parlors, Asian-owned massage parlors, and
Hmm.
unalived those people, you didn't
Hmm.
even see the scene.
Correct.
You didn't even see the scene. You didn't see a body.
Nothing. So you
You'll
can't
see
tell
us
me
laying in the street.
you can't tell me again. And so the way in which our bodies and our deaths are handled in this country is very problematic. Other people are given respect and dignity in their death. We are not.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to talk about humanity and how we're seen and whether or not we are seen in the same light of humanity as everyone else, start with that. Ask yourself, why is there over and over again, repeatedly through media, macabre scenes of Black death? Start there. Ask yourself why you don't see that with every demographic. If it's about reporting the news and getting to the truth, ask yourself why you
Mm-hmm.
don't see that with other demographics, where there is an all-day replay of what happened. And then
Mm-hmm.
you act surprised if the Black community gets up in arms and wants to go out and march and protest. Start showing some of these police shootings of white men and women and see how long white people stay at home with their cats and dogs.
Mm-hmm.
See how long. Start showing the police shootings of these other demographics and see how they react and respond to it being on television every other day. Okay, all right. Let's not pretend like we don't understand what this country is about and what's going on. Final thoughts.
Right. Um, yeah, forgiveness is a powerful word, and it has power behind it. Don't ever allow yourself to be coaxed or feel like you're being pushed into forgiveness. Because, like I've said on here, if something happened to one of my loved ones, somebody took their life and they shove a microphone in my face, talking about forgiveness, they will regret it. I'm not saying I'll punch them out, but I will use some words in a very intellectual way to make them feel so small.
Hmm.
Time to go through all those different emotions that comes along with it and get to a point to where, okay, now I can forgive.
Hmm.
Don't forgive before time. Let me put it that way. Don't forgive before you feel it's time.
Hmm. Yep. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your insight in on today. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I have been your host today, Shantae Charles. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be what?
Light.
Light. Take care, everyone. We wish you well on your forgiveness journey. And as he said, don't let anybody rush you through the process. Be well, and most importantly, be light.